know that you can make art out of just about anything? Hi, my name is Amy and we're here at Stromer's Farm for a tour of the farm to see what we can find to use to make into art. Let's get on the wagon and go for a ride and see what we can find. Our first stop will be at the pumpkin patch. We found the bin with the little gourds and pumpkins. Wonder what we can do with these. Let's go look for the perfect pumpkin. I found a nice pumpkin. I bet we can make some pretty neat art out of this pumpkin. So let's get our pumpkin and get back on the wagon. Next up will be the corn maze. All right, we're at the entrance to the corn maze. Let's go see if we can make it through and come out the other end. Well, I made it out of the corn maze. I wonder if we can find something around here to do some art with. You know what? I bet we can make art with corn. So let's head over to the farm market and pick up some corn. Next stop, the farm market. So we'll buy our corn and pumpkins and see what else we can find. So we finished our wagon ride to the pumpkin patch and the corn maze, and here's our final stop at the farm stand. And we're gonna get some apples. So we'll head out with pumpkins and corn and apples and see what we can use to create some art with those before we make our next stop to dig some potatoes. Our final stop today is to my garden, where we're going to look for some potatoes. Potatoes grow underground, so you use a special pitchfork or shovel to dig down deep, careful not to damage the potatoes, lift the soil up, and find those potatoes in the soil. So I'm going to brush them off, wash them up, and then head indoors to take all the things that we found on the farm and turn them into art. Welcome back. After we've had such a great visit to the farm to collect all of our materials from the farm to make our art projects, we're ready to get started. As you can see, I am dressed in my icky painty clothes, and our icky painty tablecloth is on the table because we are gonna get messy. So let's get started. We're gonna start with pumpkin. So the first thing that we often do when we get our pumpkin home is to cut an opening in the top and scoop out the seeds. So we're gonna turn that top opening into some art today. I've cut mine in the shape of a square. You can cut your top in a square, a triangle, a circle. It just depends on how much skill you have and what kind of shapes you want to make. So now we've got a giant stamper made out of a pumpkin top, and you would just have your child dip it in the plate. We're using just washable paint and put a little bit of paint on. I like to use paper plates because it's easy cleanup, and then you don't have to worry about using a paint palette where you've got a small hole to dip paint. So you're going to put just a little bit of paint on. If it's really painty, you might want to take a paper towel and wipe off a little bit of excess, or they can just stamp away. The first one is going to be pretty painty, and then they will get less paint as they go. And you can switch colors and let's try our red paint. And you can also learn about what happens when you mix colors. Pretty much all I have on there is the red that's going to show, but they can mix on their paper and see what happens when they mix the two colors and begin to see a little bit of orange showing up there. To make it a little more fun, if you want to, is you can add some spices so their pictures will be scented. I've got just some cinnamon here. You could use pumpkin pie spice and sprinkle a little bit of spice on. And so when it dries, their pictures are going to smell like that pumpkin or cinnamon. So that's a fun way to just jazz up their pumpkin pictures a little bit. And we're going to put this one away. This is going to be very messy. And so I'm going to try to be as neat as I can, but we're going to get messy today. So our next pumpkin picture is going to be, we're going to use some white cardstock for this one. You can use construction paper, cardstock, just plain old paper, if that works fine. Just use a piece of paper that's got something on the back and flip it over to the good white side. And then there are a couple of things that you can do with some other pumpkins. The small ones are fun to cut in half, scoop out the seeds, and then again, they can stamp and see what they can make. And this time, they'll make circles. And you can use both halves to mix up the colors on there. The second half is a little harder because you don't have a stem to work with. You could try sticking a fork or something in there to give them a little more handhold, and then put some more circles on the picture. So this kind of art is not really about necessarily creating something that looks like a bird or a dog. It's more process art, which is just taking something fun and creating some art with it. So that's how we used the small pumpkins cut in half to make rings or circles on their paper. And then we've got one more pumpkin activity. And we'll use cream colored cardstock for this one. And we're going to take another small pumpkin, and this time we're going to roll the pumpkin. So it kind of involves those fine motor skills of being able to hold the handle and twist a little bit. So they can twist, put it in various colors on each side. And then roll the pumpkin across the page. And again, it's not really going to look like something that you'll recognize, like an animal or a house or something, but it is fun to create and just make art without really having a picture to it. So just roll the pumpkin across. When it starts, it'll be pretty blobby, but by the time they've rolled it a little bit, it will, you can see the lines where the pumpkin goes and begin to see more dots on the paper. But rolling the pumpkin is another fun way to use your pumpkins and make some art. So we're going to do one more thing using those pumpkin seeds that we scooped out. We're going to show you how you can make collages and pictures using the pumpkin seeds. So that's up next. So for our final pumpkin project, we're going to use every bit of the pumpkin. To begin with our pumpkin projects, we use the lid. Next, if you want to paint the outside of the pumpkin or carve that, you can do that also, but you need to remove the seeds first. So removing the seeds is the fun part. You can have your child stick their hands in there, pull all the seeds and the goop out, and then you're going to rinse them off. After they're rinsed, you're going to dye them. To dye them, you're going to use cups with about a teaspoon to a tablespoon of water and some food coloring. Put a good bit of food coloring in, just depends on how vibrant you want your seeds to look, and let them sit in there for about a half an hour, and they'll dye into nice bright colors like these. Then your child can decorate pictures with all kinds of different colors of the seeds. They can make traditional things like pumpkins and apples, or maybe a nice fall tree with fall leaves. They can make a collage. If you've done all the colors of the rainbow, they can make rainbows, clouds, whatever they want to create using pumpkin seeds. And to do that, use some glue. I've used tacky glue because it does stick a little better and tighter. The school glue, if they pick it up, it will run and it takes a long time to dry, but the tacky glue will hold tight. Tacky glue is also a great thing to work with fine motor skills because you have to squeeze really hard. So you can let your child try, but they might need your assistance if they're using tacky glue. So just put the glue on the paper, stick the seeds on, and you have pumpkin seed art. Next up, we're going to use the potatoes that we dug from the garden. So potatoes are fun to use. You cut them in half. They make the perfect size stamps for little hands. So I've cut my potatoes in the shape of a triangle. I have a square, and I have a rectangle. So this is a great way to work with your child to learn shapes using potatoes as stampers. So this is just simple. Put the potato in, and they can make various shapes using the different potato pieces. And again, the first one will come out pretty painty. After that, they'll have less paint and just re-stamp again. and go on and on. Using the basic shapes. You can experiment with the colors too, because they can stamp the red and the yellow together and see what happens when they mix those. So you can get some learning about color mixing and shapes using this project. And then you can do a similar thing. This time I'm going to switch it up and use a piece of construction paper, and I've made it a little fancier. This one's just kind of a design to paint with, and I'm going to paint it in there. Make sure the whole bottom is painted and stamp it on, and you see some neat designs. This is a fun thing to do. If you've got a large sheet of paper, you can use white paper or the brown craft paper even, and you can make your very own wrapping paper using vegetables. You can use different kind of vegetables too. You can just take like broccoli, dip your broccoli in there, cauliflower, the carrots. You can cut a big chunk of carrot for the child to hold on to and make circle stamps. So you can use lots of different vegetables to make pictures, as well as turn those pictures and that artwork into wrapping paper, which is a fun thing to do for giving gifts. So we're going to move on, and next up is apples. We're going to use apples in a similar way that we did with the potatoes, and we're going to use them to stamp. To begin, we cut an apple in half from top to bottom, and we're going to use these as stampers. You can see in the middle of the apple where the seeds go, so it's a nice lesson about apples and seeds and how the apple trees grow. To do this, it's a little hard to hold on to that very slippery, small, curved apple. So you can use a fork, stick a fork in there, and then have your child hold the fork to make it easier to paint, and they can paint apples with it. You may need to press down on the apple and hold on with the fork. And switch colors. You can see this side's got the stem still stuck on it, and if you press the stem down in there in the paint, the stem will show up. Again, the first one is pretty blobby, but after that you can begin to see it. The stem did not come out, so you have to press the stem down if you want the stem on there. And you've got apples. You can cut these out and make another picture and put the apples into a little basket, make an apple basket. For a little added learning, on the back of the apples you can write numbers and then have your child pull out the apple and see what number it is on the back and count how many apples are in that basket. Our next apple project takes that stamping a notch further, and this time I have cut the apple in half from top to bottom across the middle of it horizontally. And then when you open the apple up, you can see that there's a star in the middle of the apple where the seeds were. And I took a cookie cutter on this one, used a star cookie cutter, pressed it into the apple and trimmed away the edges. So now I have a star stamp with a star inside. And again, you can use the fork to help your child get a grip and put that apple in the paint, smush it around there. We've got a little bit of red left on there, so let's see what happens with the red and yellow paint. So we're a little smushy. Takes a couple of tries to get that paint down, and then sometimes the paint just kind of goes away a little too much. But we're going to do the one with the star in the top now. Stick that fork in there, and this time we'll have a star shape. And the first one again will be a little blobby, but then you can see the star shape and the stars in the middle. So we'll mix it up a little bit since we're getting to the end of our paint being mixed, and make our own orange. When your colors overlap, your child again can see what happens when you mix different colors. together. And this one we've got stars within stars. So fun ways to use those fruits to make pictures, and the apple is extra special because that star is inside there. So we're going to move from our fruits now back to vegetables and work with corn. So we enjoyed the corn maze at the farm and purchased some corn. You can get just plain field corn from a farmer, or you can get the fancy Indian corn with the different colors on it. And to use the corn, we're going to paint it. You can have your child paint, put it on pretty thick, and again you can mix those colors and see what happens. Put different colors on different sides. Until the corn cob is painted. You can paint the whole thing. I'm just doing a little bit right now. And then put the corn cob on the paper and roll the corn cob. And not a lot will come off unless you put it on really thick, but you can see the dots from the corn kernels on there. And another way that you can do the corn is take the ear of corn and put it right directly in the paint, which will get it really painty, and they'll get more paint on their paper doing it this way than painting, because when they paint, it gets down in the little grooves between the ears between the kernels of corn. So they can put the painted ears on their paper and roll away. When you're to the point where you don't care if your colors are mixed, just go ahead and mix them, roll them all in there, and roll the paint away. And see those corn kernels. You'll see some kernels showing up and some will just be kind of blobby, but it's just fun to play with those corn kernels. It's beginning to look a little like ketchup and mustard mixed together on my plate, but it is fun to play with painty things, play with vegetables. So we've played with all kinds of vegetables. We'll show you our end products here in a minute and wrap it up with our art that we got from the farm. So let's take a closer look at the art we did today. We started with pumpkin lids cut into different shapes. We rolled pumpkins. We made rings of pumpkins from small pumpkins cut in half. Made pumpkin seed pictures. Used apples to make star prints and half apple prints. Made designs with potatoes using just cut geometric designs as well as some basic shapes, and did some corn rolling. We rolled corn and painted it and rolled it around that way. So we made lots of different art projects using those things we found on the farm. So I hope you enjoyed our art from things found on the farm. It's a great time of year to get out and visit a local farm, go for a wagon ride, pick a pumpkin, have a lot of fun, bring those things back to your house and make some art. We did some art today that was traditional art looking, such as pictures of pumpkins and apples and trees, and some art that's just process art, where you have a lot of fun using the materials you find and just roll, stamp, and play and have fun with that art. Get messy with that art, have fun, and enjoy fall with your kids on the farm and making art projects.